The story begins when the sky unleashed golden lightning upon the city of Line in the Dragon Kingdom, enabling monsters from another world to year. The kingdom recorded a record of 12,350,000 awakenings, an 11.3% increase over the previous year, making it the highest ever. Puntos de experiencia para alcanzar el próximo nivel. Así que apuntó a otra araña. Su ataque creó una explosión y ahora solo necesitaba 100 puntos de experience to level up, leaving behind a scene littered with monster corpses. He was congratulated on unlocking his first space abilities, and he obtained the initial ability, Small Fireball. He never imagined that the level-up reward for mythical rank hunters would be 6 times greater than that of ordinary hunters. After leveling up only 3 times, he had already obtained 18 free attribute points. The path of a monster tamer's early growth mirrors that of a mage, so he still needs to minimize his casting time, stabilize his damage output, and increase his agility. As for the starting skill, normal hunters have a limited number of skill points. They generally don't waste their points upgrading it, as it doesn't have much power. Then, a smile appeared on the protagonist's face, because once again, skill points solve everything, so he decided to maximize it, and that's how the system confirmed his action, and soon after, he had already spent 50 points of skill on the upgrade. Finally, his small fireball transformed into a medium fireball. Its damage increased to 140%, and he gained an effect special that increases burn damage by 6% every second, which the protagonist really liked. Then, he improved it further to turn it into an ultra ball of, since the arrival from another world 10 years ago, 10% of the awakened are now core hunters, a number that has greatly surpassed Ultra Fire, the highest possible skill level for his current class rank. This way, Zero will be able to upgrade his weapon after his second class change. At his current rate, he should reach level 8 after completing the first 2 world quests, which would be sufficient to challenge the final boss and complete the first clear of the first world. But just then, as he was progressing, he heard a scream, and upon opening a large door, he found a hunter with an amputated leg. This was a man named Charles, who observed the protagonist and realized that even though the deaths of the hunters were real, the world wasn't much different from a game. There were quests, dungeons, and everything was almost like a virtual game. But immediately, Charles informed Zero that monsters had killed his wife and children and requested his help in eliminating a scorpion. At that moment, the system notified him. He told Zero that a storyline had been activated and asked if he would accept the mission to exterminate the scorpions. Zero observed that the team, obtained by completing quests, was much better than what he obtained by killing monsters, so since he only had a magic staff, he decided to accept the mission to exterminate the scorpions. But the level 10 difficulty mission required eliminating all the scorpions, and also their leader, the Armored Scorpion King. The reward for the mission would be 500 experience points, 1 silver coin, and 300 pieces of random 1-star equipment. Although Zero felt something, the number of awakened who appeared during the year of Asura's birth. Because of this, they were waiting. Moving around, he saw nothing and assumed there was more than one type of threat. His priority was to complete the mission, while several eyes watched him from the darkness. Level 5. Physical type armored scorpions were monsters mutated by environmental pollution. These scorpions, with their solid armor, resist a lot of damage and reduce the effectiveness of attacks when they activate their guard ability. When a scorpion lunged at the protagonist, he was more than prepared, and immediately, with his staff glowing brightly, he used his Ultra Fireball. And although the scorpion attempted to attack him again, Zero dodged the attack and unleashed his magic, engulfing the area in flames. With that, the system notified him that he had defeated a level 5 armored scorpion, gained 115 experience points, and 50,000 skill points. Although the Ultra Fireball is extremely powerful, it greatly exhausts him quickly, according to what Zero recalled. When the number of armored scorpions falls below a certain threshold, the Armored Scorpion King's appearance will be triggered much sooner. And that's how the monster finally appeared. It was gigantic and menacing. The protagonist planned to eliminate it before all of his mana was exhausted, so he quickly cast his Ultra Fireball. However, the Armored Scorpion King struck him with its tail, rendering the attack effectless. It was as strong and resilient as Zero remembered. But without wasting any more time, this scorpion launched itself against to witness the emergence of the next Asura. We then see a man lying in his empty room, listening to news that the protagonist, who swiftly moved to the side and attacked from another angle. He launched his fireball, immediately burning the monster and completely halting its advance. He remarked that he was very fortunate because, even though he had depleted his mana, he managed to immobilize it, and now he just needed to finish it off to complete the mission. But then, someone appeared behind him. This man had his sword at the ready, and another man appeared and stabbed the scorpion's claw. They were planning to steal the final blow so they could get the reward, but Zero quickly grabbed the man who was approaching the scorpion, which, he knew they were there, and told them that they had finally revealed themselves. This surprised the guy, as he hadn't expected Zero to know their plan. Zero knew that, although some hunters level up honestly, there are also those who specialize in carrying out shady dealings, such as killing and robbing. Others, it was a pity they chose the wrong target, considering all of Zero's enemies were 1,000 times stronger than this man. Immediately, Zero unleashed his power, and the image of a man materialized behind him. Upon witnessing this, the hunter couldn't help but be terrified, and the protagonist hesitated, in blasting it away with his fire. Seeing his friend exterminated, the evil hunter's ally was stunned. He thought Zero had run out of mana, so he questioned how he could still use his ability. It was at that moment this man realized Zero wasn't a novice, to which the protagonist, main gate to the other world is about to open, and hunters are being advised to prepare. The man, who looks half dead explained that he was only pretending. And suddenly, at that very moment, a purple fire appeared above his golden flames, and the system congratulated Zero for activating the Braz, soul harvesting skill, of the Necromancer class. While he was defeating the armored Scorpion King, he received an option to transform the Scorpion King into his pet. Zero remarked that he was fortunate to quickly activate the S-class ability, which allowed him to absorb the armored Scorpion King, and the golden flames transformed into a violet flame beneath his feet that surged towards the enemy. At that moment, the system notified him that the armored Scorpion King had become his pet, which intimidated the enemy, and the pet's loyalty had reached its maximum. Zero understood that the growth of a monster tamer is challenging, since pets rely on the tamer's experience to level up. At the beginning of the game, twice the dog experience to level up increases exponentially with more pets, making it nearly impossible for the average person. However, as Zero had a significant amount of experience points, so he decided to use them to level up his pets. At the maximum level, the D rank skill, called Guard, of the Armored Scorpion King, had increased to rank A, called Iron Body. This is a passive skill that decreases the damage received by the Armored Scorpion by 30%. The man inquired about Zero's true identity, as it is impossible for an ordinary monster tamer to possess such strength, to which the protagonist, bottle of pills beside him, is our protagonist. Upon hearing that hunters were being asked to prepare, his face filled with horror, and he stood up, revealed that, from the moment he accepted the mission, he had already sensed that someone was spying on him. Secretly, he knew that those guys were assassins who used invisibility to hide and attack lone players, and who happened to receive the same mission at the same time. So, they planned to ambush him in the final stage to harvest the Scorpion King. The man realized that they had offended the wrong person and knew that he needed to flee, or else he would be eliminated right there. But before he could do anything, the armored Scorpion King struck the guy in the stomach, causing him to beg not to be eliminated. But Zero responded that, in a world where the weak are food for the strong, if anyone wishes to consume others, they must be prepared to be devoured themselves. And that's how the man lost his life before his very eyes, as he began to be devoured. Koros then thanked Zero for helping him with his revenge, and considered him his comrade. At that moment, the system screen congratulated the protagonist on completing the mission. He had obtained 5,500 experience points, a silver coin, and 3 million skill points, in addition to equipment called a magic necklace and armor boots. Zero leveled up to level 4, needing only 2,000 experience points to reach the next level. Then he checked the magic necklace and realized that it was level 4 with 1 star, increasing his magic power, and the armor boots were level 5 with 1 star, offering enhanced defense. Suddenly, as if he were a completely different person, he looked around in confusion, feeling like he was on the verge of death. His head throbbed, and memories began to surface. Zero also noticed that the equipment was perfectly suited to his needs, especially since he had been looking for something to strengthen his mana, and, with no time to lose, he refined an item to its maximum potential using 2,499 points, obtaining the golden equipment known as the Sacred Origin of Magic. He then spent 2,985 skill points to acquire the hero's protection armor. With these 2 pieces of equipment, both he and the king armored scorpion would level up to level 5 at a much faster pace. Just then, a screen appeared before him, displaying an area-wide announcement, informing him that all hunters within Doomsday Town were notified that the level 5 Apocalyptic City hidden dungeon had appeared in the vicinity of Doomsday Town. The dungeon would only remain open for 1 hour. All hunters were advised to proceed to the dungeon to undertake the mission, and the first one to clear it would receive a generous reward. People were astonished to hear about a level 5 hidden dungeon appeared, and our protagonist, confident in his abilities, decided to try clearing it now that the portal was visible. Many were recruiting teams to be the first to complete it and claim the rewards. However, one man cautioned that, considering their current levels, entering the dungeon would be almost suicidal, as they might earn money, but wouldn't survive long enough to spend it. The man reiterated that this was the main reason to form a team, and painful memories, his arduous job, being constantly looked down upon, being unable to afford his brother's medical bills, and his life as a monster tamer within a poor family. At that moment, he noticed quite a few people eager to challenge the dungeon, but suddenly, someone shoved him aside to get him out of the way. He was a knight in shining golden armor who called himself President. People were curious about who he was. It turned out to be Liu Yao, the son of the wealthiest person in Linai City. The 3 major pharmacies in Linai City are owned by the Liu family, whose net worth exceeds billions of dollars. Young Master Liu has always acted with vanity and arrogance. Even his subordinates are fully equipped with gear worth at least tens of thousands. Just then, a woman noticed the protagonist. It was his original body's ex-girlfriend, named Lino. She approached him and ridiculed him for being a mediocre monster tamer who can't even afford his own rent, yet he's dreaming of fighting in the parter dungeon. But the protagonist acted fiercely when he asked her if she had a problem with that. She was surprised to hear him speak to her that way, since she had expected him to beg her for another chance. So then, she clung to Liu Yao and told Zero that only strong men were qualified to pass through this secret realm, and she advised him to stop daydreaming. And in that instant, Liu Yao embraced Liu and ridiculed the protagonist for having been dumped and advised him to just move on. But the protagonist responded indifferently, saying that she was just a pair of old, worn-out shoes, and poor. With all of this building up and overwhelming him, he decided to end his life by overdosing on pills. The confused man wondered whose memories these were, told her that if she wanted her so badly, he would just give her to her. Regarding the unique dungeon, he mentioned that he felt that the one who was daydreaming was someone else entirely. It greatly angered Linu, who wanted Liu Yao to teach him a lesson, but instead of being intimidated, our protagonist smiled and advised them to value their lives more. However, Linu yelled that he was only acting brave when he was actually just complete trash, but Liu Yao found it strange that he couldn't see clearly the protagonist's class, as if it were intentionally hidden, but he hurriedly said goodbye in order to challenge the dungeon. And that's how he and his team headed toward the portal, reminding everyone to bring their resurrection scrolls. Just then, a man told him, Sero, to admit defeat, arguing that losers like him could never defeat those with advantages. However, the protagonist responded that instead of making mediocre comments, he should look for ways to improve and become stronger. And in that instant, Zero thought about the original owner of the body and realized that he was, in fact, a loser. But he argued that it had nothing to do with him, since he was Zero. At that, the guy responded that the protagonist was good at pretending and argued that all those men had a resurrection scroll, costing 3,000 pesos apiece. People expected the Supreme Guild would be the first to clear the dungeon, but Zero knew that most dungeons have a monster or boss guarding them. His current strength is, those memories were, since he never imagined that he would be reincarnated into the body of someone with the same name as his, 100 years later. He then recalled that the man was more than enough to face normal enemies, but he feared it wouldn't be enough for the boss monster. Victory would only be guaranteed if he and armored scorpions reach level 5 with their equipment and skills maxed out. As he observes, Liu Yao and the others arrive on the other side of the portal. Linu felt humiliated, but didn't seek revenge, to which Liu angrily responded, explaining that the loss wouldn't be worth it if someone used the excuse of killing a hunter to slander the Liu family and the guild. Instead, she promised to make that person kneel before her, which Linu appreciated. Meanwhile, we see Zero fighting monsters, and a fire has been lit. It was pointed out that a monster tamer's pet requires the same amount of experience as their master. In the early stages of the game, the amount of experience points needed for the necromancer's pet is reduced by half. Just like Zero allowed his armored scorpion to eliminate some regular monsters in order to quickly gain experience while battling in the area. Full of smoke, Liu Yao's henchman observed him from behind a rock. Just then, the protagonist was stopped by an attractive woman who attempted to seduce him, in order to get him to follow her, but he stood firm and continued to advance. At that moment, the system notified everyone that there were only 10 minutes remaining, which Zero decided to take advantage of to increase the defense of his CCO-level armored scorpion, since it would act as a meat shield at the forefront, while he invade reality, unleashing a great calamity. However, a mysterious mark appeared on each human's hand, granting them unique occupations: a monster tamer. The monster tamer class relies primarily on their pets to fight, in addition to augmenting their own abilities, concentrated on dealing damage from behind. It was then that the armored scorpion roared loudly, and Zero also used equipment that accelerated mana recovery in order to help him launch fireballs consecutively and increase his monster elimination efficiency. With all of that, 10 minutes was enough. More than enough for him, so he immediately entered the portal. The entire area was engulfed in flames, and Liu Yao and the others were injured. Liu Yao. He complained that with a little more time, they would have defeated the boss, but his subordinate explained that he had no chance against level 7 monsters when they were only at level 2. At that point, Li Nu told Liu Yao that since the monsters were too powerful, they should focus on surviving, which the subordinate accepted, and expressed that they should take the opportunity to use the scroll of resurrect and escape before the monsters caught up to them. But at that moment, Liu Yao sensed something. Someone was approaching. Immediately, everyone looked towards the cliff where a man was standing, and were shocked to see that it was none other than Zero. At that instant, Liu Yao became furious upon seeing him, and asked the protagonist if he wasn't afraid to die, to which Zero responded with a defiant smile, causing Liu Yao to challenge him to a battle. But Li Nu and the subordinate tried to stop him, emphasizing that their survival was the priority, and so, the growth attribute of his pets couldn't be neglected. It had been determined that raising a powerful monster tamer required. Before Liu Yao left, he told Zero that he'd better die in the dungeon rather than be exterminated by him personally. Suddenly, the system welcomed Zero inside the dungeon, where his mission was to eliminate the dungeon guardian, more famously known as the Armored Scorpion, which is a level 7 boss monster. At that moment, the protagonist expressed his relief that they were leaving, as he wouldn't be disturbed by the noise. A few moments later, the ground cracked, and the boss monster emerged from beneath, roaring loudly to assert its authority. Just then, Zero noticed that his health bar was several times stronger than those of the minions, and he quickly instructed his pet to attack. Satisfied with the improvements to his pet, Zero used his Ultra Fireball, dealing 206 critical damage. Just then, the boss monster attacked him directly, but his pet protected him, and Zero responded by creating several fireballs and launching a sextuple shot attack. The boss monster's face was slightly burned from the assault. Zero continued to attack, while his pet restrained it, and the monster, after one final roar, finally collapsed. At that moment, the protagonist remarked on how weak the enemy had been, and the system displayed that he had completed the level 5 dungeon within the apocalyptic city, and he received a dungeon scroll as a reward, which surprised everyone. Everyone began wondering if Zero was an important figure because of his immense power, and they were also surprised at how he needed immense wealth, comparable to that of an entire nation. For an average person, awakening as a monster tamer was actually bad news. The young man killed the guardian monster so easily, considering that most people were only at levels 1 to 3, while the monster was at level 7. And in light of these rumors, Liu Yao speculated that he could be Li Nu's ex-boyfriend, especially since the announcement came shortly after he joined. However, she dismissed the idea as ridiculous, arguing that her ex-boyfriend didn't even own a pet, so there was no way he could have cleared the dungeon alone. Hearing this, Liu Yao became convinced that someone else must have been the one to do it. He slammed his sword into the ground, declaring that whoever had killed the Scorpion leader was extraordinary, and since he didn't know the protagonist's name at this point, he immediately ordered his subordinates to find the person with ID number 0 and keep them under surveillance. Meanwhile, back with the protagonist, the item drop rate from boss monsters is, in fact, significantly higher compared to regular monsters. Normal. There were items like copper coins, blueprints, and even equipment, but the most important item was the scroll. An unenhanced dungeon scroll is worth much more than just a few thousand. Zero decided to upgrade his scroll directly to the maximum level. a challenging rank dungeon scroll. Had never appeared in the first world before. If it were put on the market, it should cost at least several 100,000. For a normal hunter, it is undoubtedly a large sum of money. But our protagonist's goal was to clear the other world. At that moment, a notification window appeared, showing that Zero, in this body, named Sam, had failed in life and committed suicide. But now, looking at a picture on the wall, he realized that the reincarnated person was his complete, had used a level 5 dungeon scroll of challenging grade. He received a gold coin and a reward mission, which was to rescue the survivor. After completing this mission within the time limit would grant a generous reward. Zero immediately examined the mission and discovered that it had a difficulty of 100 and an unknown reward that only required him to escort an NPC. He also received a level 10 map, but unfortunately, Zero was only at level 5. Furthermore, the monsters he would face, such as wild boars, usually appeared in groups, so it would be difficult to deal with them. So he decided not to stress and instead focus on finding the survivor to complete the mission. In the middle of the coal forest, a girl was being chased by a wild boar, but suddenly, the wild boar burst into flames, and slowly the smoke cleared and revealed to Zero. The little girl was happy that an older brother had come to save her, and just then, the notification window appeared, indicating that the survivor, named Aelin, had been found. There were 10 hours remaining for their mission, and at that moment, an angry wild boar appeared. Zero had noticed that the wild boars in the forest became agitated the moment he found the girl, but without hesitation, the wild boar attacked them, at which point the protagonist quickly launched a fireball at it. The wild boar continued to take burn damage, but then, several more wild boars surrounded them. Just then, opposite. In his past life, our protagonist was known as none other than Asura, the strongest awakened in the Dragon Kingdom. Zero commented that those wild boars had a lot of stamina, and mentioned that even a mythical rank hunter with a golden attribute staff and a fireball, his rank wasn't high enough to significantly damage the wild boars, but to prevent Aelin from dying and the mission from failing, the protagonist quickly summoned the scorpion. It was armored to protect her. Although the wild boars attacked as a group, the scorpion blocked their attacks without any trouble, and the protagonist seized the opportunity to launch an ultra fireball, which struck and defeated a level 10 berserk wild boar, earning him 40 experience points and 100,000 skill points. At that point, Zero informed the armored scorpion that his strategy was working and encouraged it to continue defending, as they would soon increase in rank. This is how he consecutively defeated several wild boars, but the continuous appearance of more boars and his dwindling mana made it difficult for him to repel them. In that moment, Aelin asked if he was all right, and he reassured her that he would return her home safe and sound. But suddenly, a wild boar charged at Zero. He retaliated with a fireball, roasting it, but not completely eliminating it. Fortunately, the protagonist still had some health left, health to withstand the wild boar's attack, and at that moment, he noticed that his armored scorpion was nearly defeated, surprised by how difficult the mission was. While battling, he leveled up to 7 and decided to improve his attack power. Furthermore, he used the equipment he had collected from the scorpions, but now he had been revived in this new body. He resolved to take on all the responsibilities and regrets of the man whose body he now inhabited, and to conquer a world. The glorious S-tier boss battle ring, which allows his attacks to ignore 20% of the opponent's defense. With the ring equipped, Zero, he unleashed an even more powerful fireball, combining energy with fire to eliminate the wild boar in a single blow. At that moment, he mentioned that previously, he needed 7 or 8 fireballs to inflict damage, but now he only needed 2 to kill an enemy. However, Zero was exhausted after facing a wave of wild boars. He had completed the main part of his mission and only needed to take Aelin to the trial village to finish it. But just then, Lou and Lino appeared, surprised to see Zero alive. He immediately kicked them out, as he didn't want to deal with them. Hearing this, Lino praised Liu and asked him to teach Zero a lesson, at which point Liu quickly unsheathed his sword. Zero challenged him to see if he could really kill him, and that's how Liu Yao attacked him, testing whether his verbal skill was superior to his sword. But the blade failed to penetrate Zero's shoulder. Surprised by this, Yao couldn't believe he was unable to harm Zero, even though Zero was just an unarmed beast tamer. At that moment, the protagonist asked if he was finished, and then demonstrated his power with a great swirl of flames. Yao, terrified by this, he threatened Zero, saying that he was from a powerful family and that Zero would regret it if he hurt him. But our protagonist paid no attention to all that talk, and without, where the weak were at the mercy of the strong, seemingly as a gesture of gratitude. With the announcement that the main gate to another world was about to open, the hesitation, he launched his fireball, and Liu Yao was immediately blasted away. He complained about how he ended up in such a state from just one shot, and in the blink of an eye, he turned to dust, leaving his golden armor behind. He then looked at the system screen and called Liu a complete fool. On the other hand, in that world, a hunter's name is usually white. However, when a hunter launches a malicious surprise attack on another hunter with a white name, the attacker's name temporarily turns gray. During this time, any retaliation from the victim is considered self-defense and does not incur an evil value. If the victim doesn't retaliate and dies, the attacker's name turns red and they receive an evil value. According to the rules of that world, an aggressor cannot log off, even in a safe zone, until they eliminate their evil value by killing enough monsters or waiting for death. Upon death, the hunter loses levels, experience points, and a significant amount of equipment and items. Linju was terrified to see that Zero had eliminated Liu in one fell swoop. She wondered when he had gained so much power and panicked as she saw him approaching, since she couldn't use her scroll of resurrection, which can only be used twice within a certain period. She had already used one to escape the dungeon previously, and now she was in serious trouble. Fearing for her safety, she tried to gently persuade him, but he and Aelin ignored her and walked right past, telling her that the only reason he wasn't attacking her was the protagonist stood in front of it, opened the gate, and went through the portal. At that moment, the system greeted Asura and informed him that it had been offline for 3,652, because he couldn't waste his time on insignificant people like her. And so, after these words, Linju watched him walk away and couldn't help but feel enraged, because Zero dared to ignore and humiliate her. Shortly after, at a certain house, Aelin thanked the protagonist, because she was able to return home safely thanks to him. Just then, the system window congratulated Zero for completing the challenging rank reward mission, called Rescue the Survivor, as well as receiving an ice magic staff, a skill book called Little Icicle, and a pet egg. He also leveled up in terms of his vitality, gaining 30 mana and 12 free attribute points. Zero is currently at level 80 and needs 9,500 experience points to level up. New level. Our protagonist then summoned the staff. It was a level 8 ice magic staff with an extremely strong affinity for the power of ice, and since Zero had nearly infinite skill points, he decided to refine the staff the maximum allowed 144 times, using a total of 22,356 skill points, and turning the equipment into a golden attribute item called the Icebreaker Scepter. The higher the grade of the equipment, the more skill points are required for refinement. But fortunately for our protagonist, that amount wasn't a problem. But in addition to the staff, he also obtained other loot. He took out the pet egg he had obtained, which was of normal grade, so he wasn't dazed, and several screens opened before him. It notified him that he had received a large amount of skill power points. The system congratulated him on, very excited about it. He had also obtained several normal grade pet eggs while hunting monsters, so he decided to use them all as food to the Armored Scorpion. The Armored Scorpion was pleased with the idea and received several notifications that his pet had successfully consumed the eggs. After this, the system congratulated him, because his pet had evolved into a silver armored scorpion. The evolved version looked fantastic with its silver body. Zero was quite satisfied with the 2-star magic staff and the silver armored scorpion, and he thought that, together with the golden equipment Ruo had provided earlier, he should be able to challenge the final boss of the first world. But before returning, he needed to replenish some materials, and upon exiting the portal, he found that it was already dark. When he arrived at his room, he received a call regarding the 390,000 that he owed money for his brother's medical bill, and he was warned that if he didn't pay, the hospital would immediately halt his brother's treatment. Our protagonist requested the payment card number in order to transfer the money to the hospital within 10 minutes, planning to sell some pieces of golden equipment to get the money. His intention was to help the brother of the original body's owner. However, he later discovered that the equipment was soul-bound and could not be exchanged or sold, which left him stunned. He commented that having a BF, battle force, increase of 10,000 times without being able to problem, being the first to defeat a wave of 9th rank monsters, and complete the mythic rank achievement within his unique class. As a reward, he received the trade. His equipment was a major inconvenience, and even with over 10,000, selling his silver coins still wouldn't be enough, so he started to Thinking about how to make money, he searched on his phone and discovered that the payment for normal boosting services was low, but he found an interesting offer seeking a booster for 300,000 gold that had generated a lot of interest, which intrigued the protagonist because of the dangerously high reward. Without hesitation, he decided to contact the person with a disturbing smile. We then see a girl sitting in front of her computer with multiple monitors. Asked about the specific requirements for the 300,000 Lanus reward for the boosting quest posted on the forum, to which the girl replied that, first, he must assist a new hunter from the current batch, and secondly, he must help the designated person complete the first world. He agreed to that, but attempted to negotiate the payment down to 390,000 yuan, to which the girl responded that she would even give him 400,000 once the mission was completed, at which point the protagonist, wasting no time, asked when they would begin, to which the girl informed him that the person he was going to escort would meet him at the respawn point in Doomsday Town in 10 minutes, and so, Zero waited in that town. He was more than happy to earn 400,000 yuan just for escorting one person through the first world, which he was already on track to complete, and helping them face the crisis. With the dawn of the occupation shift era, humanity became hunters. Among the many who, Supreme Divine Decree, a mythic rank treasure that would activate automatically. He also obtained a permanent B, which represented an increase of 10,000. Anyway, he saw it as a decent deal, with guaranteed profits and no risks involved. But just then, he noticed someone, a woman completely covered in cloth, including her eyes and hair, but he immediately asked if she was the person he was waiting for, which only confirmed his suspicions. The people who saw them began to murmur, as they knew the woman as the calamitous mage, and couldn't imagine the weak tamer of beasts accepting the offer, commenting that people nowadays really value money more than their lives. Zero observed her, and suggested forming a team, assuring her that he would help her complete the world quests. So she joined the team without any problem, though her identity remained hidden. Zero informed her that to complete the first world, she had to fulfill 2 mandatory missions, kill 1,000 monsters, and then earn 10 coins. So he asked her if she knew about it, and she confirmed that she did. Then, the protagonist explained that in the other world, hunters cannot harm monsters that are 5 levels or more above their own, because even if the protagonist attacks a monster until it only has 1 health point remaining, it's useless if he can't kill it. So, he told her that he would help her level up while they completed the missions together. In this way, when they faced a scorpion monster, Zero attacked it with his freezing technique. And even though the spell damage he obtained as part of the quest rewards wasn't as times the ability to gain power in another world, both online and offline, has been applied to him, and he has received additional rewards. High as that of the fireball, it wasn't bad when used as a crowd control ability. After having frozen the scorpion, he asked the woman why she was just standing there and told her to finish him off. And although the woman seemed nervous, she managed to conjure flames. Purple marks appeared on her palms, which then came into contact with the frozen monster, and that contact resulted in an explosion. At that moment, the system informed her that she had leveled up, and it happened 3 more times. But unbeknownst to her, a scorpion monster was suddenly approaching to attack her from behind. Zero, realizing this, immediately shouted for her to be careful. However, he arrived just in time and was able to grab her and dodge the attack. He then used his ultra fireball technique, and his attack caused a massive explosion. He looked serious as he held the woman. He looked at him in amazement, but he didn't even notice. Instead, he simply told him to get up so they could go to the next training location. As they walked, he asked how old she was to be able to afford 400,000 yuan, to which she replied with a hand gesture indicating she was 21. Seeing this made Zero comment that everyone awakens at 18, so it must have been 3 years since he entered the other world, and he asked why her level remained low. Hearing these words, she stopped walking, prompting the protagonist to ask what was wrong, to which she slowly removed offline, totaling 21,893,530,000 skill points. He was astonished by this enormous amount of her hood, revealing her purple hair and eyes, and proceeded to thank him for helping her to level up, advising him to leave immediately, promising him 10,000 yen so he wouldn't tell his sister anything. Hearing this, Sero said he thought she was mute, and assured her that he would help her to complete the first world, as it was a promise to his sister. She looked horrified, reminding him of what those people said about her, that she was the embodiment of a calamity or a curse, and she worried that staying together would cause him trouble. However, Sero was curious about what embodiment of calamity meant, and she was about to explain it to him, but someone interrupted, saying that the calamitous magician was causing harm to others again, and that's when several men appeared. One of them said that it had been stated on the forum that she always, if someone accepted the calamitous mage's mission, that person would die prematurely. Conversely, it was said that whoever managed to kill her would obtain a large amount of experience and skill points. And that's how the men decided to attack her in the name of justice, which caused the woman. She immediately panicked because those men were 5 to 6 levels above her, and she knew very well that she had no chance against them, and told Zero that, since they were only interested in her, he should leave and abandon her. But our protagonist was very angry because they wanted to touch ability. This was a generous reward for clearing the highest ranked monster wave in the world. The system also notified him that he had obtained his 400,000 without his consent. However, suddenly someone appeared and noticed the team fight, mentioning that they found it very exciting, and, in the blink of an eye, several armored figures entered the scene. Witnessing this, the men who were already there murmured amongst themselves, recognizing that the person in front of them was young Master Lu Yao of the Lu family, the wealthiest family in Linai City. They knew they stood no chance against him if they had come to steal the kills they had worked for. At that moment, a man from the initial group approached Lu Yao and politely informed him that they had no intention of offending him. However, Lu Yao told the man to shut up and immediately approached the protagonist, commenting that it seemed they were destined to meet. Zero provoked him by asking if he was there to give him equipment again, and mentioned that he couldn't use any more scrolls of resurrection would occur within the next 7 days. Upon hearing this, Liu Yao raised his hand and commanded everyone to eliminate Zero. And just then, the woman's profile then appeared. Her name was Su Yan, and she was at level 1, but other than that, nothing else was known about her. Meanwhile, Zero looked very serious, which confused Yu Yao, who noticed that his men were simply standing behind him, unmoving. So, without hesitation, he smacked them on the head, asking if they didn't understand his instructions. After this wake-up call, they all surrounded the protagonist and class reset. He was prompted to choose one of the 7 main mythic rank classes: Dark Knight, Warrior, Swordsman, Suyan. But then he observed each of their movements, and suddenly, everyone brought out gifts while begging Zero to reconsider. Upon witnessing this, Suyan was so confused, while Linu, completely stunned, asked Liu what his intention was in doing that, to which he responded by telling her to shut up. He approached Zero, but maintained a safe distance by hiding behind one of his men, telling the protagonist that he understood. He wasn't afraid to use brute force like Zero, but he didn't want to resort to that, which is why he had made special arrangements for his men to carefully select super rare treasures for Zero, and mentioned that he could have them all on the condition that he joined their guild and worked for him. Furthermore, he would also pay him 50,000 yuan a month. At that, Linu commented that for a poor peasant like Zero, Liu's offer was something he couldn't refuse. He couldn't achieve it even after 10 years of hard work, and she suggested that he join Master Liao's guild. In Linus's mind, she hoped that Yao would be delighted that he was helping him persuade Zero to join his guild. And once the protagonist joined them, Linus planned to teach him a lesson for the humiliation he had previously put him through. However, Zero replied that he only admired those who are stronger than him, and suggested that Liu Yao should use force so that he could consider his offer. Upon hearing this, Linus became very angry and mentioned that 50,000 Dark Assassin, Shadow Blinder, Divine Priest, Hell Sorcerer, Archer, Spectral Hunter, Monster Tamer, or Necromancer, Ura, was more than he could earn in a year, so he had no right to reject Liu Yao's offer. However, Zero responded by asking him if she really thought everyone would choose to abandon their humanity and become a dog like her, and she asked if they were still going to fight or if they should do otherwise. Just get out of their way. This is how Liu Yao ordered them to let Zero go, but Linu, extremely furious, couldn't accept his decision and asked him why he was doing this, to which Liu Yao angrily ordered her to be silent, which she, upon hearing this, decided to back down and shut her mouth, and that's how they watched as the protagonist and Su Yang walked away. But then, one of Liu Yao's subordinates commented that his boss was generous for letting Zero leave, when Zero had previously tried to eliminate him. The subordinate insisted that Liu Yao should have eliminated the guy, but because he was speaking out of turn, Liu Yao punched him to shut him up. Then, with a smile on his face, Liu Yao explained that the best things in life are earned through difficulty, while things that come too easily are never truly worth it. At that moment, Linu grabbed onto him, asking what made him change his mind. considering he initially wanted to exterminate Zero at all costs. He responded that it happened after Zero defeated him the last time, and he unexpectedly grabbed Linu's jaw, appearing to hold back his anger as he repeated what she had said earlier, that the Ploton family, he had awakened as an epic class warrior 100 years ago, but the strongest main class in that other world at the time was actually that of the Doc, couldn't afford gold equipment, yet it was a mystery how a mere monster tamer could cause so much damage. Liu Yao knew there was more than what met the eye, which is why he wanted Zero to work for him. This made Linzhou clench his teeth tightly in anger, insisting that Zero was just a poor peasant and that one day he would make him grovel at his feet. Meanwhile, returning to the protagonist, Suyan thanked him for protecting her, to which Zero replied that it was nothing, mentioning that, otherwise, he would lose his 400,000 yes if she died, and that was not a good way to end the day. However, Suyan approached him and suggested ending the matter, since she thought that Zero could complete the mission. The protagonist then asked her why she posted the reward on the forum if she wasn't confident, adding that she could simply broken the agreement from the very beginning. So he asked her why she decided to enter the world of monsters. Suyan responded that she had given up a long time ago, and that all of this had been her sister's doing. Furthermore, she mentioned that she was the embodiment of calamity and showed him something like proof. This is how the system window revealed that her special class is a misfortune mage, and due to her calamitous body, she cannot kill monsters on her own. Instead, she must form a team with others and share the burden of the calamity with her teammate. In that situation, monster tamers. The only problem with that occupation is the astronomical amount of power needed for them to level up both themselves. Her life and her partner's life are connected, and if one of them dies, both will die, and their level will immediately return to 0. Furthermore, if they separate halfway through, the level will reset to 0, but the partner will not receive any penalty. When a misfortune mage completes upon clearing the first world with a calamitous body, the player and their companion who destroyed the calamitous body will receive a significant amount of experience. Hearing this, Zero was surprised. As a special class hunter, she had just discovered that, in addition to main class hunters and subclass hunters, special class hunters also exist, provided they overcome the limitations of their class. There is a high probability of a high-ranking class emerging, potentially legendary or even mythical. But it's a shame that ordinary people can overcome this limitation, since they can only become ordinary people, fading from everyone's sight. Su Yang shared that she had already tried it over 100 times since she awakened to this special class 3 years ago, but she never succeeded. Furthermore, he mentions that there's a rule in the other world that prevents you from teaming up with someone who is more than 10 levels above you, and he was wondering how it was possible that 2 people who are, at most, level 10, could defeat the boss of the first world, so he advised the protagonist to leave. But the protagonist asked what would happen if he said it times was times possible, and told him that he, themselves and their pets, making growth for that class immensely difficult. However, since he had been reincarnated, and even could help her complete the first world. Hearing that, Su Yang was surprised and hopeful, and immediately grabbed him, asking if he was seriously speaking. And while asking this, she mused to herself that for 3 years, she had always dreamed of breaking free from that class limitation and becoming a huntress revered by the masses, wondering if it was even possible. To this, he calmly smiled, telling her that she should stop talking so much because there was a world waiting for them to explore. This is how both missions were completed in just a few hours, and as the monsters lay lifeless, Sui inquired about the protagonist's true strength, but Zero interrupted her thoughts, pointing out that the previous tasks were already complete, and all that remained was to challenge the boss. However, Sue was nervous as she told Zero that she had no problem challenging the boss, but our protagonist noticed something was off and asked her about it. She began to explain that she kept wondering why someone so powerful would have accepted a mission like that, to which the protagonist immediately told Su Yan it was because he was broke in the real world. Upon realizing what he'd said, Zero immediately turned around, blushing, and thought he should watch what he said next time, but she told him there was no shame in admitting it. Finally, a notification window popped up, asking Zero and Su Yan if they were ready to. Had 1,000,000 years worth of offline power, his main choice was naturally the necromancer. The system congratulated him for becoming the 4th. Challenge the boss after completing all the missions. They both got ready, and the protagonist quickly pressed the yes button. As soon as he did, a thunderous sound echoed in the sky, and they both watched as a bright portal opened before them, linking the village to the First World's boss arena. This place was also known as the Demonic Abyss. Both our protagonist and Sui were excited as they began to enter into the portal, finally arriving at the Demonic Abyss. It felt as if they had stepped into a massive dungeon, with a large hourglass floating above their heads. Immediately, several red notifications appeared, informing them that the boss challenge would last 1 hour and that they needed to defeat the First World's boss, called the Enraged Wild Boar King. There was also a warning that if the group failed to defeat the Boar King within the allotted time specified, or if they were defeated, it would be considered a complete failure of the challenge, and they would have to repeat the mission tasks before challenging the boss again. Challenging the boss. After reading all of this, Ciro tossed some resurrection scrolls and instant recovery potions towards Yanyan. She could not. She couldn't believe that our protagonist possessed such expensive items, but Ciro ignored her astonishment and told her in a serious tone that death in another world was really unpredictable, so it was always a good idea to be prepared before a fight. This is how he began equipping himself with the defensive gear. Acquired new classes. Only 3 stood out with mythical ranks. One of them was Alfar, a phantom swordsman from the United States. The other was Rastif, mythical rank necromancer in the other world, and awarded him an initial rating of 100 stars. He was strong, as one would expect from a mythical rank class that he had, and he also gave Luo's body armor to the Silver Scorpion for additional defense, and immediately, his huge pet became materialized behind his back as he prepared to withstand all the Wild Boar King's attacks. She was amazed at what she was seeing. All this was happening, but suddenly, Ku pointed out to Suyan and her scorpion pet that the Wild Boar King was approaching. That wild boar was a creature, large, with 2 enormous horns and a red halo surrounding its body. Zero immediately drew his ice scepter and readied himself to attack the monster that approached. Meanwhile, the system indicated that this king was a level 10, 2-star boss, with exceptionally high stats and skills. That included Fury, Brutal Charge, and Death Stomp. As it was Sui's first time facing such a foe, she was literally trembling while trying to calm herself, telling herself that this time they would truly defeat the boss. But the last time she saw the boss, an entire team of dozens of people hadn't been enough, managed to defeat him, and now there were only 2 of them. Immediately, Zero turned around and saw that the Wild Boar King had left Yan with psychological trauma on Yan, so he told her to hide behind the silver armor scorpion and focus on healing him, but she was also worried about Plot and told him to be careful, to which Zero responded with a smile, saying he was just going to eliminate this little pig. Suddenly, a necromancer is a messenger revived from the underworld who has control over the strength of the dead. Only death can stimulate a necromancer's powers. The Wild Boar King started running towards Plot, surrounded by a flaming aura. However, Zero countered with a super ball attack of fire, inflicting 325 damage on the creature. However, as the dust and debris settled, Zero noticed that the Boar King didn't even have a scratch body, but instead of becoming anxious, he smiled, knowing that a boss-level monster would indeed have tough skin and be difficult to defeat right from the start. Just then, the monster began to roar at the protagonist, but the pet scorpion immediately stepped in and defended them both. Zero dodged the attack and maintained his distance, while using the scepter's attack to inflict damage on the wild boar. And then he realized that it didn't matter how tough the boar's skin was, since the silver-armored scorpion could withstand its attacks. But suddenly, the Wild Boar King performed. A surprise attack struck the pet scorpion, sending it flying several meters and inflicting serious injuries. Witnessing this, Hiru wondered if it was really going to be that easy. It was going to be so easy, but the Wild Boar King was already preparing its devastating stomp attack. Seeing this, Sue began to scream, telling our protagonist to get out of the way immediately, but it seemed that Zero was waiting for the wild boar to use its destructive attack, and that's how. He faced the wild boar's destructive attack head-on, and although he realized it was risky, he knew this was his opportunity. He was enveloped in. A necromancer has a magic attack growth of 25 stars, a mana growth of 18 stars, and a vitality growth of 20 stars. Ice shards while using the scepter's ice pick attack, which dealt 325 damage to the wild boar, and even the ice effect was causing 50 damage to the creature every second due to its effect. But those with lower star ratings tend to have a 50% status resistance, meaning the effects of the ice wouldn't last very long. Suddenly, the wild boar became enraged, and a crimson, evil aura completely enveloped it as it began to roar loudly. At that moment, Suyan realized that this creature was now enraged, and based on what he had heard from his superiors, when the Boar King was in a state of rage, it would begin to use its deadly stomp skill, which could even damage high-level professionals. But before the boar could raise its legs, the armored scorpion immediately materialized and pinned the monster boss to the ground with all its strength. However, holding it, this creature was proving difficult to handle and was damaging the pet scorpion, which couldn't maintain its grip for much longer. But Zero was determined not to give in, surrender his 400,000 yuan, so he ordered Sui to immediately restore the scorpion's health while he prepared to attack with his ice scepter. That's how Sui used her staff and healed the armored scorpion, but even when it was fully healed, the pet couldn't last long, due to the high damage that the boar was inflicting in its enraged state. So she shouted that they needed a much stronger attack. And then she saw that they also have an 18-star physical defense growth and a 19-star magic defense growth, along with abilities like soul harvesting. Our protagonist's eyes were fixed on the monster as he materialized a combined fire and ice attack. The attack was multiplying in size. As he smiled, he told Sui that a few seconds were more than enough time, and then finally attacked the wild boar king. With the dance of fire and ice skill, the wild boar began to scream in pain and agony upon receiving the attack, as it was trapped in the ice and burned by the intense flames. It was time for our protagonist to deliver the final blow, so he enveloped himself in fierce flames and used the 2000 rapid fireball attack to damage the wild boar one last time. Suyan was completely stunned as she witnessed all of this, since she had never seen anyone use fire and ice abilities with such mastery as our protagonist. Finally, the wild boar king fell to the ground, completely defeated. Zero smiled as he began to glow with a faint blue aura. And at the same time, a system notification congratulated our protagonist on defeating a 2-star boss. He had obtained a 100% reward, along with 6,000 experience points and 1,000 W of energy. He even got 12 silver coins and 16 pieces of rank 2 meat. At that moment, our protagonist thought he was going to put most of these items up for sale, but the loot wasn't finished. He also got the skill book called Frenzy, which sacrificed 10% defense for a 5% increase in attack for 10 seconds, along with Evolution of the Spectre and Reduction of Death. The intelligence of an ordinary monster tamer's pets is typically obtained through rewards from a Frenzy Magic Robe, which was a 2-star level support magic item, and the Frenzy War Ring, so he decided to keep these 2 IMS for the armored scorpion pet instead of selling them off. Meanwhile, Suyan was surrounded by a purple aura as the system congratulated her for breaking the restrictions of the Calamity Mage class and had now obtained a primary class, the epic level Forbidden Sorceress. Reading this, he couldn't help but cry tears of emotion, wondering if he was dreaming or if it was reality, because he had finally managed to get rid of the Misfortune Mage status and had also evolved into an epic main class. But suddenly, both Zero and Suyan were interrupted by a Janja world notification announcing throughout the game that Zero Yui had completed the first Nightmare Source world. Upon witnessing this, the audience was perplexed, unable to comprehend how someone could clear the first world in under half a day. The number of people who had done so was so low that only under 2 people had completed the world, even with hundreds of players actively participating in the game. But then, someone in the RAREST audience recognized Suyan's name. She was the one without any combat abilities, who had been holding everyone else back, which made it even more baffling for everyone, because Zero had been carrying her the entire time and had defeated the boss single-handedly. Meanwhile, inside the rare missions, making it impossible to improve their inherent character, Asura did not expect that a necromancer could evolve and harvest other monsters too. Boss Arena. The notification informed Zero that the second world, called Zombie-Infested City, was now active, and both Zero. It was because Suyam could enter the world at their convenience that 2 portals opened in front of them, one blue and the other red. It was at that moment that he realized that the red portal led to the second world, while he could return home using the blue one. He was curious to try out the second world, but first, he had to resolve the issue of his brother's medical bills, so he immediately headed towards the blue portal. Even as Suyan asked him where he was going, he told her directly that he was going to ask his sister for the money he deserved. But Suyan didn't have time to ask any further questions, and at that moment, she realized that our protagonist was the mysterious class changer that everyone had been talking about. The scene then changes, and we arrive at the center of the wrong.Yi city, where a secretary approached a lady named Mrs. Zung and informed her that she had a phone call. Immediately, the lady, she put the call on speakerphone And on the other end, Zero told her that the job was done, so now she could transfer the money he deserved. But she told him to wait because she would have to confirm the details first and then transfer the money to him. However, she thought that there was no one capable of clearing the first world in just half a day, and she believed that Zero was just a fraud asking for money. But suddenly, Sui approached her older sister with a turn them into his pets, improving their personalities. In his previous life, he relied on an epic rank class to clear 70 worlds in 10 years and become Big Smile. She was very excited to see her sister again, who revealed to her that she had escaped the body of misfortune and had evolved into an epic core class. Hearing all of this, his superior blushed, mentioning that they had never had a user of that level before, the Sun family. And when asked how many people had supported her in achieving this, Sue innocently replied that only one man had helped her. Upon hearing this, she was paralyzed with shock and sat down to avoid fainting, realizing that it was all the work of a single man. She immediately asked Sui if it was Zero, the man who had helped her just moments ago. Upon confirming that this was indeed the case, she saw that he was being talked about everywhere and smiled mischievously, thinking that the couple had broken records and become the first to reach the second world, and he thought that with the help of both, could improve his family's standing throughout the country. In the end, she revealed her true colors and announced to everyone that they would be holding a meeting. Executive immediately, as they needed to attract talent to their Mist Rain Pavilion in order to clear the second world faster than anyone else. Following that, this all started the next day with a phone call from the hospital. The receptionist informed Zero that they had received his payment, so he was now able to notify the hospital if he needed anything in the future. Hearing this, the protagonist realized that Mrs. Sunga had followed through on her payment promise and mentioned to the best-ranked player in China. But now, starting with a mythical rank class, he decided to cleanse every world and become the strongest at a global level. Hospital receptionist that they simply needed to cure his brother and look after him until his recovery. However, the hospital staff reminded him that the brother's condition was more serious than expected, requiring him to remain hospitalized for months and incurring costs between 40,000 and 50,000 per month. Upon hearing the exorbitant medical costs, Zero realized that if he didn't agree, his brother wouldn't receive adequate care. But after he cut the call, his phone immediately began to ring again, which greatly surprised the protagonist, as Suyan's older sister was on the other end of the line, who asked if he was interested in joining the Mist Rain Pavilion Guild. And wouldn't you know it, the sister was the vice president of the guild, named Jinja, who informed Zero that all his insurance would be covered and that his base salary would start at 30,000 per month, in addition to any bonus he could possibly earn. Zero smiled, realizing it was truly a significant moment, and told him he would definitely join his guild. But just as both sisters started celebrating, Zero interrupted, telling them he had a condition. This is how he mentioned to them that they could ask anything of him or have him participate in important events, but the guild should never interfere with his personal freedom under any circumstances. Hearing this, both sisters were genuinely surprised, and one of the guild's board members was unhappy with the boy's demand. World. That's how the sun rose, and Azur entered a portal, being welcomed into the first world of the other world, better known as the Source of Nightmares, arguing that joining the guild implied committing to its cause, and acting solely on individual freedom could undermine their purpose. That's what he mentioned. If he couldn't accept, then he should forget the proposal. The call immediately ended, and everyone turned to look at the talkative man, who hadn't. He didn't stop talking. But suddenly, the camera focuses on Chen, the president of the Sung Foundation, who wanted to know if Jinja truly wanted to have this man at any cost. She then began to explain that Zero was the class changer who had managed to break her 100-year record by defeating the first world boss and clearing it in less than a day. According to her, our protagonist was a once-in-a-century prodigy, so they needed to seize every opportunity to secure him. Even when the guild president tried to argue against it, Suyan immediately stood up, telling her, "Dude, Zero was actually something completely different." At that, the older sister spoke again, suggesting that everyone first participate in any guild activities, so he would contribute. Hearing all of this, the president paused to consider it, and then agreed with the sisters. "But I would participate in any guild activity, so I would contribute." Upon hearing all this, the president thought for a moment and agreed with the sisters, but he warned that if Zero denied all authority, they would have no choice but to decide their own fate. And so, at that very moment, our protagonist was the safe zone that the system had matched him with, based on his registration. The location is the town of Doomsday. He was asked if he would continue receiving the guild's call again. He smiled at the thought that the Zung Foundation ranked 5th in the kingdom, but still, his monthly salary and bonuses should be enough to cover his brother's medical bills. He finally answered the call again, and the sister told him that they were ready to accept his terms. He wanted to know what time Ciro would be available to report to the office, but he added another condition, telling Jinja that he always preferred to work from home instead of the office, and since they were both in the same place, the time zone shouldn't be a problem. Ciro was trying to profit from the guild in any way he could, and although the sisters acted surprised, he told them that if they couldn't do it, the deal would be cancelled. But before the protagonist could hang up, Jinja accepted his proposal, and Zero, satisfied with the agreement, felt relieved that he wouldn't have to worry about his income, so he decided to advance to the second level of the alternative world. After this, the scene shifted to the blue portal, where he received a system notification asking him which world he wanted to enter, to which Zero chose the zombie-infested city, and the red portal began to envelop him, and that's how he proceeded to enter the portal. Upon exiting into the second world, he was greeted by a system notification informing him that he was in the safe zone called Rondon. This world was on the brink of the apocalypse, and a Hellfire Dragon Rider from Russia, and lastly, Kanengizian, the Mage King of the Snow Kingdom. Mythic-ranked occupations were far superior to the rest. Azur's ID, or if he should confirm his new ID. But the protagonist decided to change his ID to 0, ensuring that in his new life he was destined to. Humans were being consumed by darkness, which was mutating them into zombies. The humans who still retained some semblance of sanity defended themselves of the zombies, and our protagonist had to cooperate with other survivors because, once the fortress was breached, there would be nowhere to escape to in this world. It also had 2 missions that included obtaining the Secret Kingdom Pass, as well as participating in and successfully repelling 3 waves of zombies. After completing these 2 missions, Zero would be able to challenge the boss of the second world and enter the third world. But Zero knew that the level requirement for the secret realm was at least level 15, so he needed to level up a few more times before even considering attempting the first mission. As for the second mission, he would only have to wait for the waves to begin. Suddenly, just then, the protagonist heard a man shout and saw Captain Norton, who was warning everyone about the imminent arrival of a new wave of zombies. Had the captain worried about the lack of available weapons for the soldiers, a concern that Zero clearly understood. Zero immediately realized that this world was more challenging than the first, and the safe zone's periodic zombie attacks generated constant tension. The captain immediately greeted Zero and informed him that a battle could erupt at any moment, so he needed him to head west to Rondon and gather materials to forge and maintain their weapons, just like they did in their previous life. Zero knew that there were a total of 10 missions, surpassing the existence of Asura, and the only thing that surpasses everything is Zero. In another world, a woman was fascinated by how realistic everything appeared. Meanwhile, available in Rondon, and the one the captain gave him was the most difficult and time-consuming of them all. Just then, our protagonist noticed the notification, which told him that he would have to collect 100 fire and ice cores, along with a poison core, and in exchange, he would receive 100,000 experience points, 50 silver coins, 9,000 energy, and 2 random 2-star equipment items, plus a skill book or a pet egg. Zero started to smile, because although it was the most difficult, this mission was the most rewarding of them all, and by completing it, he could surpass all other missions in the entire world. Finally, the protagonist agreed to the captain's plan, telling him to leave everything in his hands. After this, they headed to the outskirts of Rondon, specifically to the west, to an old military supply base, where multiple zombies were growling and snarling all over the place. While several fires broke out in the warehouses, our protagonist was prepared with his frost scepter and scorpion pet, and without hesitation, he began attacking with a superpowered fireball, inflicting 266 points of damage to a zombie, plus an additional 50 points of freeze damage. Immediately, the zombies, drawn to him, began to close in, but his scorpion attacked fiercely, and Zero noticed that some of the zombies were fire-resistant, so he decided to use a different strategy, smiling as he wondered how long they would last. Zero commanded his silver-armored scorpion pet. A man was confused, expecting to find monsters everywhere, but they were informed that they were in a safe zone and that the monsters were outside of it. To engage the fire zombie, and the creature roared as it grabbed both of the zombie's hands with its enormous pincers. Meanwhile, Zero believed that with multiple A-rank protection skills and all kinds of protective equipment, an elite monster like his scorpion wouldn't be could be eliminated by the fire zombies under any circumstances. But suddenly, our protagonist felt genuinely uneasy when he saw that his pet scorpion was enjoying breaking the bones of the already dead zombie. But he still decided to press on and immediately prepared his frost scepter for another attack, and decided to counter the fire zombie with his frost scepter's ability. And suddenly, a blue aura began to completely surround the zombie. And suddenly, multiple fragments of ice pierced the zombie's already broken ribs, causing it to scream in pain and agony. Finally, Zero defeated a zombie, level 11 fire, earning 50 experience points and 110,000 energy points. However, our protagonist remained dejected because he only received a single bronze coin after defeating such a challenging monster. It was then that he realized the drop rate for these zombies was terrible, but since he had a mission to complete, he resolved to eliminate all the zombies regardless. Thus began the killing spree of our legendary Zero. And he earned multiple gold coins along with experience points and materials as he leveled up to level 11. But after the massacre, it was also announced that the first world quest had been released and was available on the quest panel. He had to show for it was only 50 fire cores, and he still had a long way to go to complete the mission, especially with such a poor drop rate. Furthermore, Zero was already starting to get hungry, because no matter what, he was still human. So, he decided to log out and find something to eat for now, and then he would pick up where he left off that night. But before he could disconnect, he suddenly heard a loud roar from an epic level monster. He immediately turned around, thinking that something must be happening, and a big surprise was waiting for him. He saw that a huge portal was beginning to open in the world's dimension. Witnessing this, Zero realized that this was the respawn timer for the monster lords, which generated multiple high-level monsters for people to hunt. Suddenly, at that moment, a huge, ogre-like being emerged from the portal, while roaring loudly. It was a level 14 Ice and Fire Sovereign Zombie, a truly valuable monster lord that could drop some very good equipment or a high-quality skill book. When he saw the large monster in front of him, his eyes began to shine, and even the monster was surprised to see that the human in front of him was smiling greedily instead of being afraid. Zero immediately materialized his ice scepter and was ready to attack the zombie. Seeing this, even the monster began to roar with all its might, and before the protagonist could do anything, the monster lord began to attack, and began preparing by looking for groups to join and gathering the necessary materials. The system window displayed details about the source of nightmares. One of the monster's punches caused multiple fragments of ice to protrude from the ground, which caused a great deal of damage to our protagonist. But at that moment, the monster lord used one of his abilities called Icicle Spike, and multiple ice spikes began heading towards Zero at insane speeds. He was so fast that Zero couldn't even dodge them, and took 352 points of damage from just this one attack, knowing that he would die. Zero started to summon his super fireball and launched it towards the creature. But, to his surprise, the monster only received negligible damage, and even with the ice attacks, the damage was only 150, which was even lower. Zero was now in trouble, unable to understand what he should do, because the opponent in front of him was a dual fire and ice zombie, and since Zero didn't have a counterattack effective against both elements, he couldn't maximize his attack at all. He was truly desperate. Know what to do. Zero immediately ordered the silver-armored scorpion to fight the monster, but it was no use because the zombie simply punched the scorpion pet, and it was all over. The scorpion pet suffered a significant amount of damage, but the fire zombie was not ready to stop and ruthlessly used multiple icicle spikes once again, and with this attack, even the supposedly unbreakable armor that Zero thought was indestructible was pierced and shattered into pieces. Because of that, multiple notifications appeared, informing Zero that providing information about the first world, and reporting that when darkness covered the earth, the monsters that were in a deep sleep beneath the surface, silver-armored scorpion pet had perished in battle, and now he would have to wait 3 hours to summon it again, and he received a level loss penalty and a deduction of 10 loyalty points for his pet. However, thanks to the necromancer's effects, he only needed to wait an hour, and the other penalties were nullified. But still, an hour was a considerable amount of time, and the protagonist felt lost, as he was fighting a monster of a completely different level compared to the monsters of the first world. But suddenly, a bolt of purple lightning struck the monster, dealing 138 damage and stunning it for a brief moment. This attack came from none other than Sui, who had come to protect our protagonist, who was very surprised to see her. And Suyan, without hesitating, told him that she would help him contain the monster, so he should continue doing what he was doing. Our protagonist was relieved to know he had support, and confident in his protection, he began using multiple ice and fire attacks. All in all, they slowly wore down the Monster Lord's health, bit by bit. At first, the Monster Lord laughed, as the attacks barely affected him. Damage. But by multiplying those insignificant attacks a few times, this turned into a considerable amount of damage. At that moment, the Monster Lord, he realized that he was in a really bad situation, but suddenly, Ko summoned a super fireball and sent it towards the Monster Lord. And they awoke to find the world destined for ruin in a coming calamity. As the sole survivor, Zero must break free from this doomsday pattern. He immediately turned to her, asking if she could do another lightning attack to accompany the fireball. Hearing that, she quickly took her staff and used the light beam skill. As soon as he did, a truly dangerous bolt of lightning struck the Monster Lord, stunning him. Hero was surprised once again by Suyi's flawless and elegant attacks, recognizing the true power of the Cleferent, epic-level forbidden sorceress class. But the protagonist was not far behind, and used his attack, combining his super fireball with his ice pick, throwing shards of ice and high-heat flames towards the zombie, who screamed in immense pain. Furthermore, Suyan used her magic staff to increase the damage inflicted by Zero, and finally, the system congratulated her for taking down the flaming ice zombie sovereign alongside Zero. The pair had worked to obtain 3,000 experience points and 4.2 million alternate energy points. Zero smiled upon seeing this, turned around, and thanked Suyan for joining him. He wanted to divide the rewards equally for the fight against that zombie lord, but she immediately waved her hand in refusal. Dismissal, telling him that there was no need to do that, since she had just arrived to take on a mission and had met Zero along the way. Not to mention that she hadn't even properly thanked him for bringing her this far. But Zero, being very logical, told Suyan that her sister, multiple calamities, and crush the encroaching darkness. The first mission is to kill a total of 1,000 monsters in the first world. Secondly, he must collect a. She had already settled all her debts, but according to Suyan, her sister was her sister, and she was herself. So, she extended her hand, introducing herself to the protagonist with her real name and asking Zero who he was. After thinking for a moment, Zero turned around, greeted him warmly, and told him that his name was Sang, the name of the original body he inhabited. At that moment, she suggested that since they were in the same guild and had both accepted a gathering mission, they should form a team, which would make everything much easier with more hands to help. Hearing this, Zero asked her about the effects of her new class, and it was like Suisse transformed into a little girl as she excitedly told him that all of her crowd control skills had been enhanced and their effects would last 30% longer. Additionally, all of her abilities received a 30% reduction in their cooldown time. Hearing all of this, Zero thought that with those kinds of crowd control skills and maneuvers, his progress would be much easier if the girl were with him. But suddenly, our protagonist turned around and realized. He turned around and started heading somewhere else, at which point Suyan asked him where he was going. Zero explained that they could regroup in 10 minutes, since he was going to go to Nordingen to defeat some monsters for the time being. And as he walked away, Suyan was completely mesmerized, staring fixedly at him, and she remembered that she had promised herself to marry whoever managed to break the curse affecting her. However, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed for even thinking about all those total of 10 silver coins by killing monsters or completing quests. Upon completing the aforementioned missions, he will be able to activate the teleportation tunnel things. Meanwhile, inside the town of Rondon, Zero was reviewing the loot he had obtained, which included 3 pieces of equipment and a book of skills. He decided to sell the things that were useless to him and keep the rest, and without hesitation, he equipped a pair of eye-catching boots called the Rapid Ice and Fire Boots, which gave him a physical defense of 55, a magical defense of 51, and agility of 10. These boots granted an additional 10 agility each time the user's attack landed, an effect that lasted for 5 seconds and could not be stacked. But even so, the protagonist was happy to receive a direct increase of 10 to his agility. Then he needed a more powerful and damaging spell, so he used the skill book and began refining an attack, turning it into a super fire missile, which was an A-rank skill that could summon 3 fire bullets, dealing 110% magic damage and consuming 72 mana and a 5-second cooldown after each use. At that instant, Zero began to glow with a faint yellow aura, realizing that with his current speed, he would be untouchable if he combined it with his new ability. But suddenly, a notification appeared in front of him, informing him that Suyan was inviting him to the Fog Rain Pavilion Guild, and the protagonist finally accepted the proposal, thinking that he should return, because he had gotten the hang of the equipment and skills for now. And that's how she and Zero met and began to defeat zombies one after another, using the take an instant snapshot of the first world's boss, defeat the boss, and advance to the second world. However, the protagonist noticed that the general design of this other world hadn't new superfire missile, which was causing extensive damage to all the zombies. It was a great, flaming massacre, and Suyan watched everything, thinking that Zero, he was incredible for eliminating the zombies with a single blow. Upon hearing this, the protagonist smiled and told her that she wasn't doing badly either, and that she was definitely a 10, in all aspects. Furthermore, he told her that she had great awareness and control, especially with her timing when using crowd control spells, and without no doubt her new equipment was helping her too. As soon as she heard all this, she told our protagonist that her sister had arranged that for her, saying that it was suitable for Suyan's class, but Zero was now a little wary, realizing that it was really great to be so well equipped. But suddenly, she asked him if he had also been hiding some additional effects of his equipment. At that, Suyan speculated that, due to his high attack power, Zero might possess some hidden mythical-grade equipment. To this, Zero smiled, saying it had nothing to do with such insignificant equipment, claiming that he was merely a mythical class changer. However, Su didn't accept this, reminding him that the appearance of a mythical class changer is usually accompanied by strange phenomena, and nothing unusual had occurred, nor were there any records of new mythical class changers this year. Hearing this, Zero smiled, thinking that his class couldn't be awakened through normal means, and simply told Su that it was her decision whether or not to believe what he said. Leading the kingdoms of the Lighthouse, Russia, and the Ice Nation to distinguish themselves in conquering other nations 100 years ago. The Dragon Kingdom as well changed much, so he decided to purchase some equipment before undertaking the missions, and that's how he was welcomed into a store where the owner was true. Finally, since they had acquired the fire and ice cores, only the poison cores remained, so they both decided to finish this mission. So, Sui decided that they should head to the poison zombie nest right away, but before they could proceed, a notification popped up, urgent, from the Misty Rain Pavilion, summoning everyone to participate in an important activity. The notification instructed them that they had to meet in the city within 10 minutes, and anyone who failed to attend would be expelled. Upon reading the message, Sui immediately realized that it was Chen Jun who was intimidating everyone with such an announcement, and as soon as the protagonist heard that name, he asked who this Chen Jun was, wondering why he had so much authority. Immediately, Sui formed a very arrogant image of him in his mind, and told Zero that Chen Jun was the guildmaster of the branch of the Line City, and because his father and uncle were very close friends, Chen Jun obtained his current position without actually doing anything. Even so, Zero thought that it was a guild activity, and he should head towards the city of Rondon at the same time. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see a large zombie monster was eliminating several people with a single blow. Many adventurers were sent flying several meters, while others collided with each other. And here we are surprised to find that it was a fight between the Mist Rain Pavilion Guild and the unfortunate Luo. Some members of the guild, the equipment store was called Chao's. Bien immediately saw him and asked what he needed. Zero also noticed that the system's equipment store was the same as before, told Lu Yao that they had found the boss first, so they should be the ones to finish it. However, Yuo yelled at the members of the Mist Rain Guild, disparaging them and declaring that he could crush them at any moment. But suddenly, a magic circle manifested in the sky, and fire bullets began raining down on everyone. Turning around, Liu Yao realized that he had challenged Sito, who was approaching him, asking why he was fighting his guild over just one boss. Time rewinds 1 hour to when the monster was causing havoc, and the entire guild was trying to take it down, but it was still no use because all the adventurers' weapons were ineffective against it. Response: one of the guild members told the president that without the forbidden mage, it was truly difficult to contain the boss, and it wasn't even possible. Attack. However, Chen Hu was not ready to concede, so he asked his men what they had available, instructing them to maintain their formation and weaken the enemy until Sui arrived. Finally, Zero and Sui reached the location, and at that moment, a boy remarked that she was truly impressive, but also sometimes very cold towards people. Another boy mentioned that he had heard she had recently managed to break through her class limitations when they saw Zero at her side. One guy commented that there was no way the guy next to her could have helped her, and others agreed with that statement, saying that, as before, it could only provide some basic and rudimentary items. Even the best equipment they had was only 1 star. Taro Chow told Zero. There was no way, because that boy looked weak and ordinary. Hearing their conversation, Sui glanced at Zero and told him to ignore them, explaining to him that she wasn't cold towards people at all, which surprised the protagonist, who didn't know how to respond. At that moment, Su-Yi felt nervous and embarrassed as she realized what she had just said, while Chen Jun was happy to see her, but was surprised to see Zero with her, and he asked who Zero was. However, Su-Yi retorted that it was none of his business, but Chen Jun voiced his concern, suggesting that Zero might have bad intentions, to which Su-Yi replied that she knew how to distinguish between good and bad. Then she asked Chen Jun what the emergency was. Chen Jun said that the zombie fortress had been upgraded, and the boss had appeared. Hearing this, Su-Yi immediately looked at Zero, who agreed to go with her without doubt it, and as they walked, she mentioned that defeating the zombie boss immediately after its appearance would greatly benefit the guild. Upon hearing this, Zero urged Sui to eliminate the creature as quickly as possible, stating that it was his duty as a guild member. However, Chen Jun stopped Zero, instructing him to remain there. Surprised by this unexpected reaction, the protagonist inquired about the reason, to which Chen Jun became angry, claiming that a mere beast tamer had infiltrated their guild, hoping to exploit their resources, and that if he wasn't satisfied with those items, he could provide higher-grade equipment for a few more copper coins. This is how the protagonist dropped he warned him not to get ahead of himself. Upon hearing that Zero was a beast tamer, the others began to murmur amongst themselves, and then a boy. He commented that he'd heard those types are difficult to train due to their slow growth. Another boy asked them to look at his equipment, saying that it was bankrupt, and that he was only in the guild for the money. But at that moment, one of them told Chen Jun that letting him go would be a waste of the guild's valuable resources on someone like him. Hearing all of this, Suyo tried to contain her anger and asked them if they didn't know who Zero was, but before she could say anything more, the protagonist interrupted her and, smiling, told Chen Jun that, as president, he had the final say in this situation. Suyo hesitated for a second, but then grabbed Zero's arm and told Chen Jun that if Zero stayed, she would stay too. Hearing this, he became scared, and he asked Su not to be angry, explaining that he was only thinking of Zero and worried he would die on the battlefield because he was too weak. However, he added that Zero could come, but only as an observer who couldn't interfere, and that he had to bring his own resurrection scroll. Chen Jun then took Su's hand, asking him to come with him immediately, saying that with their crowd control, they could defeat the boss without any worries. But before completely withdrawing, she asked Zero to wait for her, promising she would return for him. However, the protagonist knew very well that facing bag full of 100 copper coins and then asked for a 1-star magic staff. The other buyers were surprised to see Zero receive a level 15 boss would take time, even with Su's help, so he decided to test out the skills of the 5th-ranked guild. When Chen Jun was losing against Liu Yao's guild, when Zero intervened, using his spells to inflict massive damage, and upon witnessing this, the members of the guild of the Reign of Mist were shocked to see Zero's power, since they believed he was simply a beast tamer. Liu Yao was also surprised to learn that Zero had joined them. Lino was also present, and when he found out that Zero had joined another guild, he became extremely angry and couldn't help but scream in anger, completely cursing Zero and mentioning that Brother Yal had kindly extended an invitation for him to join the Supreme Guild, but he preferred to be just another dog of the Reign of Mist Guild. Suddenly, at that moment, a purple magic circle appeared. Purple flames erupted from above her and from the circle, engulfing Linu. Sui had cast the spell, declaring that Linu should be quieter now. Yu. Then, he called Zero and inquired about his earnings from the Mist Rain Guild, offering to double or even triple his pay if he would agree to join them. Furthermore, he offered him the position of Vice Guild Master, where he would essentially function as the executive director. Suisse was infuriated by this offer and shouted at Liu Yao, questioning how he dared to try and poach Zero right in front of them. Just then, the protagonist stepped forward and told Liu that Zero was a man of trust and staff, since he had spent all 100 of his copper coins on it. Someone commented that a 1-star magic staff wouldn't increase his power by much. Integrity, and as long as he was under the Mist Rain Guild's command and fulfilling his duties, he couldn't simply switch sides like that. But, smiling, he told her the future was uncertain, and that they would speak again when the time was right. Liu Yao, pleased by his words, assured Zero that the doors of the Supreme Guild would always be open to him. Then, he ordered his men to retreat, which greatly surprised his trusted subordinate, Trust, who questioned whether they were really going to give up after being so close to capturing the boss. Liu Yao became angry upon hearing complaints regarding the boss's home, and he shouted that it no longer mattered, and asked his men to consider the bigger picture. He then explained his decision to abandon the area. Then, Suyan thanked Zero for his help, to which he replied that it was the right thing to do. But suddenly, a monster opened its red eyes and attacked, and Zero. He quickly pushed Suyan aside, dodging the attack and ensuring their survival. They stood amidst the complete devastation, and the monster that attacked them was none other than the Zombie King of Despair, a creature 10 times the size of a normal human. Zero then pulled out. He immediately brandished his staff, declaring he would handle it, and without hesitation, attacked with his supersonic fireball. The hunters from the Rain Guild of Mist were shocked to see Zero, a mere beast tamer, displaying such power, and they couldn't believe their eyes as Zero's attack, suggesting it would be better to purchase a full set of crude items rather than just a single weapon. However, Zero was grateful for the advice and walked away without saying anything further, reduced the zombie's health in a single blow. In that instant, the protagonist felt an overwhelming surge of power, and then instructed his vine to do what it did best. Doing so, she quickly raised her staff and used her crowd control ability to amplify Zero's fireball, engulfing the king. Zombie on fire. The protagonist then launched his flaming super bullet, throwing it at the zombie king and roasting him in flames that consumed his entire body. Following this, the zombie king fell to the ground and died after only 2 attacks from Zero, whose power had increased thanks to his recent rewards. At that moment, a system notification congratulated him for defeating the level 15 zombie king of despair, granting him 7,000 experience points and 100 energy. The Mist Rain Guild hunters were astonished by how easily Zero had defeated the zombie king. At that moment, a hunter commented that, even though the zombie king was weakened, he was still a formidable boss, and yet, Zero finished him off effortlessly. He also emphasized that, he even intimidated the Supreme Guild, earning the respect of young Master Liu. At that moment, Suyan thanked Zero, stating that if it hadn't been for him, the Supreme Guild would have stolen their boss, to which the protagonist humbly responded that he was only fulfilling his duty as a member of the guild. Upon hearing these words, the hunters were impressed by Zero, considering him a role model. After this, upon returning to Nordingen, Zero and then a woman commented that, although only weapons with more stars can be refined to increase attack power, the process requires. Suyan walked together, talking and smiling, followed by the other hunters. Upon their arrival, Chen Jun immediately asked angrily why they had come back. As soon as they had secured the boss, a member who had been present when Zero killed the zombie king informed Chen Jun that Zero and Su had repelled the Supreme Guild and defeated the boss. This completely surprised Chen Jun, who questioned whether it was possible for a beast tamer to possess such power. The blue-haired man affirmed Zero's abilities, suggesting that his guild would be stronger than ever with him around. However, a disgruntled Chen Jun accused Zero of waiting until the boss was weakened before intervening, and angrily informed him about the consequences of disobeying the guild master's orders. But the protagonist responded by grabbing Chen Jun's finger, twisting him and reminding him that it was Chen Jun who had ordered him to remain still. And even though a member told Zero to stop, emphasizing that it concerned of their master, Zero stated that he had completed the mission exactly as assigned. And upon seeing that Zero was being attacked, Suyan came to his defense, telling Chen Jun that without Zero, they probably would have lost the boss and possibly been annihilated, and that Zero's contributions deserved recognition. All the hunters who witnessed Zero defeat the zombie king agreed with what Suyan said, and then she turned around and hard to obtain skills and resources, such as quests to farm monsters with low drop rates. A man responded that those resources are suggested to the protagonist that they move forward with their next missions. After that, both of them departed from that place, while Chen Jun was furious to see that everyone was siding with Zero, and even Su Yang wasn't defending him. He quickly ordered one of his men to keep an eye on Zero, instructing him to report immediately if he discovered Zero's weakness. Meanwhile, the protagonist and Sui arrived at a purple forest shrouded in a poisonous mist. Upon entering, Sui covered her nose with her hands, repelled by the stench. Immediately, Zero warned her to be careful of the poisonous zombies, which were more dangerous than fire and ice zombies. Sui inquired about their attacks, and Zero explained that although they didn't have elemental properties, they had a lethal ability. Just then, a zombie appeared that could poison anyone who attacked it or was attacked by it, causing a 6% health loss. Heals every second for 5 seconds, although the ability could only affect each target once they were alerted by the zombie's sight and abilities. Poisonous. Suyan felt very frightened, but Sero calmed her down by telling her to just make sure to heal periodically. Touched by out of concern from the protagonist, Suyan acknowledged his advice and was about to attack when she suddenly remembered something, so she handed Sero a magic item as a reward for completing the guild quest. Grateful for this, the protagonist thanked Suyan, and that's how they both launched themselves against the zombies. Scarce, and that only someone reckless would try to use them to level up. The others murmured that he would soon suffer, since he had no money left, or poisonous zombies. Suyan cast a powerful spell that restrained a zombie, and while she fought the zombie alone, she asked Sero to hurry up and use his spell. Immediately, the protagonist unleashed a triple fireball attack, striking the zombie and inflicting 100 points of damage, which quickly eliminated it. Witnessing this, Suyan praised him for his impressive damage output, but he, laughing, credited his success to her assistance. As they ventured deeper into the forest, Zero sensed that someone was following him, but he decided not to react just yet. The follower was one of Chen Jun's men, who reported to the guildmaster that Zero was completing quests with Suyan and that they were gathering zombies. Seeing the friendly interaction between the two of them, Chen Jun became extremely enraged, especially since Suyan had never smiled at him since he acquired his Calamity class. At that moment, the man named Sand suggested finding a way to separate Zero's yang from him in order to expel him from the guild, and during their conversation, a system notification suddenly appeared. It was an alert from Rondon Village, alerting all class changers on Rondon's borders about an imminent horde invasion in 30 minutes, with the horde's level being of level 13. And as Chen Jun was planning to do something against Zero, he laughed and expressed his determination to ensure that Zero had no place in the Mist Rain Guild and to make his life miserable. But then he panicked, mentioning that he was worried because they didn't have any more. Had a prodigy named Asura, who in just 10 years broke records in China and was the first to clear the 70th world. However, he died. Had any defense, they believed that it was impossible to advance without money, and that, for a beginner hunter, spending everything on a 1-star equipment set was impractical. Resurrection scrolls, and that player killing was disabled in safe zones. However, Chen Jun had a grand plan, which was that, upon the horde's arrival, the protections would deactivate for other class changers, thus allowing him to attack Steel without any issues. Meanwhile, the protagonist and Suyan had eliminated hundreds of poisoned zombies, leaving a trail of corpses in their wake. They had managed to collect many gold coins from the zombies, and Suyan was excited because they were close to finishing. But then Acero reminded him that they had little time left before another horde of zombies appeared, when suddenly, a zombie bit Acero on the shoulder, and, although Suyan was startled by the surprise, she raised her staff in order to attack, but the protagonist, without needing help, eliminated the zombie with a single blow. However, the bite left him wounded and bleeding, and he sat down, holding his shoulder, worried about his condition. Suyan asked if he was all right, to which Sero, trying to appear brave, replied yes, and then suggested they had done enough, and that they should head back. However, unbeknownst to them, someone was spying on the protagonist and Suyan, having witnessed the entire scene. When Sero and Suyan got back to the village, a system notification popped up, congratulating them on completing their resource-gathering mission and rewarding them with 100,000 experience points and 9,000 energy. They also received zombie armor and zombie leggings, in addition to a skill book called Flash. Sero leveled up twice. They believed that the ability power gained from cultivating monsters was too limited to refine even 1-star equipment. Weapon 0, reaching level 17, and now needing 55,000 experience points to reach the next level. Meanwhile, Suyan, who wasn't far behind Sero, also leveled up to level 16, and both of their energies increased significantly after leveling up. Excited by this achievement, Suyan told Sero that she had reached level 16 and acquired 2 pieces of level 15, 2-star rank equipment, and asked him what he had received. The protagonist smiled and summoned his armored scorpion, telling her that it was now level 17. Upon being summoned, the armored scorpion also leveled up 3 times, and Suyan praised Sero, pointing out that if he weren't sharing his experience points with his pets, he would probably already be level 20. Then, She reminded him that since the horde was approaching, he needed to refine his equipment. As Zero had forgotten this, he quickly opened his status window. The piece of equipment he obtained by killing the zombie was a level 15 blast-resistant armor, a gold rank item exclusively for Yusavel. It increased constitution and stamina by 5 points and blocked 50 points of damage, making it particularly effective against zombies. In addition, he acquired level 15 blast-resistant leggings, which offered 95 physical defense and 90 magical defense, in addition to increasing strength and resistance by 5 points, and these were very effective against zombies. With these two pieces of equipment on his level 15 armored scorpion, Zero, the magic staff of burning hell, has 1 star, a magic power of 5, and a level of 0, and the protagonist is aware that he's lacking in ability power, felt invincible, and asked Sui to join him in facing the horde. However, his mood changes when Suita, excited about the event, ready to face whatever may come, but her enthusiasm is abruptly cut short when she sees a notification on her device. The message indicates that she needs to go to the office because the guild is waiting for her to discuss something important, and her sister is there as well. Reading this, she looks disappointed and turns to our protagonist, apologizing for having to leave due to family matters that need to be resolved, and wondering if he will be all right, facing the event alone. However, Zero reassures her, telling her that he will be fine and urging her to hurry, reminding her that she won't be able to leave once the event begins, but she can't help feeling worried as she asks about the event, reminding him that it's a swarm of large numbers could damage him. Despite only being at level 13, she insists that he must be careful, to which the protagonist thanks her, assuring her that everything will be all right. Good. He then creates a portal to exit the game, and as she passes through it, he focuses on the person who has been following him, but is also distracted by the announcement that the event is about to commence. Distracted by receiving the announcement that the event is about to begin. Just then, lightning flashes across the sky, and a message warns the players to prepare themselves. Prepare themselves. As the zombie horde approaches, the players watch as the system informs them that they will not be able to leave this world during the event, and that the protective effects of the safe zone have been lifted. By spending 1 point of this power on refinement, there's a 10% chance to improve its green attribute. The higher the attribute, the greater this world, and that the protective effects of the safe zone have been lifted. Furthermore, the system informs them that the event will conclude when someone eliminates the most of 50 zombies and survive all the waves. As the notification disappears, a large door then appears and begins to open, signaling the start of the event. When a horde of zombies bursts through the door, roaring loudly, without hesitation, they charge towards the town, ready to fight amidst the chaos, and tensions rise as the players prepare to face the incoming wave, and a massive explosion defeats a number of zombies. At that moment, our protagonist feels very confident, thinking the event will last an hour and a half, and that they should be finished after killing 50 zombies. However, he remembers that the notifications stated that they had to survive all the waves, which he finds misleading, since he believes that he uses this tactic to instill fear in the players, preventing them from joining the fight. But just then, he receives several messages from members of his guild, praising his skills in the game and asking for advice. Additionally, they suggest meeting up during the event. At that moment, Zero smiles as he realizes that the person who was following him must have spoken with their leader, and they've decided to act against him. Following this, the scene changes to the area suggested by the members of the guild, where Zero sees other players lying defeated on the ground. Simultaneously, 2 figures look out the window, observing Zero from a distance, cost of refinement, and the lower the probability of success. Although he was asked repeatedly if he wanted to refine, Zero always answered in the affirmative, and one seems pleased that he decided to come here. At that point, one of them questions his partner about Zero's defense, which San then mentions that, despite his high damage output, he was injured by a low-level zombie, suggesting he has invested all his points into damage and none into defense. Furthermore, he reports that he has positioned 12 archers to ambush Zero in the back alley, following his commands. As we observe the archers waiting to attack, Sung adds that with Zero's low defense, they should have no problem taking him down, which Chen Jun, upon hearing this, leans toward the window and, with excitement in his eyes, comments that, once they take him down, they will let the other team waiting at the respawn point finish him off, and declares that this is for trying to steal his woman. This is how our protagonist finally arrives at his destination and takes a step forward, aware that they will attack, and despite the rain of arrows heading his way, he smiles confidently, knowing that everything is going according to plan, and quickly summons his pet, who effortlessly blocks the arrows as he prepares to act. Witnessing this, Chen Jun and his entourage look on, very confused, attempting to understand how Zero was able to block all the arrows, but suddenly, the system announces to the protagonist that he has been intentionally attacked by his guildmates, and for the next 10 minutes, he will not receive any penalties if he defeats those who attacked him. Upon reading this, he becomes excited. His staff glowed as the refinement process continued successfully. He watched the notifications and was then informed that his equipment had already been, knowing that he had planned this situation and declaring that now it was his turn. However, regrettably, we will end this video here. But if you liked the video, so leave a like and a comment. But as your good friend, I always remind you that the soul of the sluggard craves everything, but attains nothing, while the soul of the diligent will prosper. And without anything further to add, until next time, reaches. But the soul of the diligent will prosper. And without further ado, see you next time. Upgraded to the highest possible level, the system screen displayed that after 132 individual refinements, consuming a total of 985 skill power points, he had obtained the golden attribute. Now, his weapon is the magical staff of the Scorching Pioneer. Refining it 132 times demonstrated the true power of possessing quadrillions of skill power points. His staff has a characteristic called Scorching, which means that every time the Twals user attacks, they will inflict a third-degree burn status on the enemy. The enemy will lose 20 health points per second due to this effect. With all preparations complete, defending the kingdom during an invasion of 9th-rank monsters, sacrificing himself to protect his homeland. On the anniversary of his death, it's time for the protagonist to put on a good show in the first world, the origin of nightmares. It was the beginning of nightmares for everyone else. Novice hunters. A hunter slashed at a world with his sword, but it had no effect. The hunter was terrified, wondering what that monster's rank was. Monster. It had so much health that it was impossible to inflict any significant damage, and a single hit from it would kill them. Suddenly, a golden orb of light appeared. It was magic that eliminated the monster. The burning effect of the Scorching Pioneer magic staff had been applied. Zero observed the monster's corpse. The system informed him that he had defeated the giant mutated rat, granting him 2 experience points and 1,000 skill points, and a buff that increased skill points by 10,000 times was applied. Zero is a mythical hunter with a maximized base attribute buff and maximum level equipment. While ordinary hunters need to team up to take down a mutated giant rat, he can defeat one with a single blow. Other hunters took notice of him and were curious because he dealt an incredible amount of damage and possessed top-tier equipment. At that moment, a woman, she wondered if he was a veteran hunter, but he countered that it was impossible for anyone to have enough skill points to refine a beginner's magic staff to that extent. Zero was considered a significant figure because, in order to maximize his experience in the first world, the source of nines, of Chushao as a hero, a commemorative ceremony was held in the capital of the Dragon Kingdom with all the top hunters in attendance. That nightmares needed to confront higher-level monsters, not just the low-ranking mutated giant rats. There were poisonous spiders of a certain level. 3. Siu. Level 5 armored scorpions. Level 8 frenzied wild boars. And finally, the final world boss, a wild boar. Level 10 berserk. Zero decided that his best option was to hunt monsters of level 3 and higher in the abandoned factory, but just as he was about to leave, he was blocked by hunters who tried to recruit him by offering healers, tanks, and DPS roles. They also tempted him with indecent proposals, but Zero, rejecting the offer, turned away and continued on his way. They watched him walk away and then talked about his terrifying aura, which was even worse than those monsters. They noticed that Zero was heading towards the abandoned factory. They had heard that all the monsters there are high-level and extremely dangerous. They wondered if he planned to confront those monsters. They simply couldn't help but think that this imposing figure was very different from ordinary people. Like, they saw a large rat with its mouth wide open. The screen showed that Zero killed a level 1 mutated giant rat, earning 2 points, experience, and 3,000 skill points. Then, by killing a level 3 poisonous spider, he received 8 experience points and 3,000 skill points. By killing another poisonous spider, Zero leveled up to level 2, increasing his vitality to 13 and his mana to 12, and gaining 6 free attribute points. He now requires 250